This
on.
conference will now be recorded.
Okay, let me start over. I'll call the meeting to order. We have 17 people currently online, and we might have 18 now. So we got some people just joining us. So the meeting is called to order, and Stacy, if you do a roll call, please.
Sure. From the city of Fredericksburg, Dave McLaughlin.
Is a roll call necessary when you have all the names lined up on the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have the person taking notes. Our administrative assistant Leah, she might not be able to see the ones who are calling in. The names aren't necessarily on that.
Good suggestion, Rupert. I'm present.
Okay. Joshua Brock.
Present.
We have two new members, Josh Castellarin.
It's John.
John, I'm sorry.
Castellarin.
I'm the queen of butchering names. I apologize. We have Matthew Rowe, also a new member.
Hello. I just go by Matt.
Okay, Matt, thank you. From Spotsylvania, we have Neil Holleran. No Neil tonight. Stan Huey. Al Durante.
Present.
Anton Stubbs.
Here.
From Caroline County, Ken Pogue. Michael Hoyt. Justin Chenault. And if for some reason we don't hear your reply, go ahead and either leave us a chat or email us later that you are present for the meeting, please. From Stafford County, Melvin Allen. David Swan.
I'm here.
Ethelene Crenshaw.
Here.
Glenn Goldsmith. Timothy Haddix. Wade Sudrath.
Here.
From King George
Hello.
County. Oh, who's this?
Ken Pogue, Caroline County.
Okay, thank you, Ken. We've got you. From King George County, we have Leslie Jordan. Robert Gates.
Here.
And at-large members, we have Larry Gross.
I'm here.
Rupert Farley.
Here.
And Dustin Savage.
Here.
Thank you. Anyone that did not get a say here in time?
Melvin's here.
Melvin. Thank you, Melvin.
Stacy, it's Neil from Spotsy.
Okay, got noted, Melvin and Neil. Thank you. And Dave, that moves us on to number 3, the approval of the May 13th Seatac agenda.
Well, before that, since we have the two new members from Fredericksburg, if they could just give a short introduction of, you've been in Fredericksburg this long, what do you, just give us a little bit of self about you. Let's start with John, please.
Well, I teach over at Germanna. I'm an English professor. I actually moved up to Fredericksburg in 2006 to start teaching over there. Originally from Chicago and went to the University of Notre Dame.
And what got you into interested in Seatac or transportation issues and that sort of thing?
In large measure, it actually was my students. Been writing a lot of getting them to look at proposals and trying to find solutions. And one of the big problems they kept coming up with was transportation. And I was just trying to figure out what could I do to sort of help them a little bit, and this seemed like a good place for me to be.
Excellent. I see gears cranking in Stacy's brain already, where she's saying, "Oh, we don't have a lot of students who are participating, either Mary Wash or Jimana. So this might be a way we can reach out for better community involvement, which is excellent. So thanks for that, John." And Matt?
Hey, I'm Matt. I've lived in Fredericksburg for 3 years, but I lived in Bowling Green for the 13 years before that. I'm a GIS administrator for Stafford County. And when I lived in Bowling Green, I was on the town council there and on the planning commission.
Okay, well, that agenda item later on about the Bowling Green plan is going to be
I'm
great.
looking forward to it. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So are there any reasons anybody needs to change anything on the agenda? Because we're moving to approval of tonight's agenda. I wouldn't think so. We don't have any consent items or anything like that. So, okay.
So move.
I'm sorry, go ahead. So moved. Thank you. I heard Rupert said so moved. All right. Second? Anyone?
Mel, I second it.
And who is that?
It's Melvin.
Okay, Melvin, thank you. All right. I won't say all in favor. Anybody who's not in favor of the agenda items or approving the agenda. Any nays? Okay. And then we'll assume that the agenda is approved. Now we have to move to this, a little more involved here, obviously, because we're going to approve the Seatac meeting minutes. It has been 2 months, so that was a kind of a memory jogger to go back through the meeting minutes. And
So move.
any second?
Second. Who's Al?
Al, okay. Well, I could just see Al. Thanks. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Let's do it the other way around, I guess. Take a minute. Is anybody not in favor of approving the minutes from the March 11th Seatac meeting?
I'll abstain because I was not a member at the time.
And who's that?
Matt Rowe.
Matt, yeah, that makes sense. You're right, Matt.
As will I.
Abstain is an excellent response. Okay. So the meeting minutes have been approved. Stacy, you are going to review the policy committee meeting, which
Yes, so the April policy committee meeting was canceled due to health concerns. So these minutes are a review of the March meeting on March 16th. Most of FAMPO staff participated remotely. I believe it was either the day after or the day of the governor's stay-at-home order. So that's why we participated remotely. We did have a quorum of the policy members physically present because at that time that was the requirement. I'll give you a brief summary of some of the action items. That meeting was also a public hearing. There were no public comments given and no members of the public present at the meeting, which is no surprise given that social distancing orders had just gone into place. However, we did give a update on the FAMPO's public involvement outreach for the Transportation Improvement Program and the related air quality conformity analysis. So we let them know that we were still actively collecting comments and soliciting public feedback on those two documents. Additionally, the policy committee took several actions at that meeting. They approved 4 George Washington Regional Commission and 5 FAMPO round 4 smart scale projects. I'll briefly name those projects for you. For FAMPO projects, there were 5. It included a Route 208 operational and multimodal improvement. Number 2, the Exit 126 STAR study that was part of the Smart Scale Round 3 application. And this included a VRE feeder bus from Route 208 Park and Ride lot to Fredericksburg VRE. The third FAMPO project approved was a Garrisonville Road widening project. The fourth, a Lafayette Boulevard study multimodal improvement with transit and bike and pedestrians. The fifth, an I-95 exit at 130 to exit 126 southbound only and multimodal improvements. And I know you guys are going to have questions on these projects. I'll let Adam take over there if you have any questions, but most of those would be directed to VDOT. I'll just put that clause in now. The 4 GWRC project applications, which FAMPO staff have submitted. Number 1, on Route 17, a study for improvements there. Number 2, on Route 1 and Layhill Road, intersection improvements. Number 3, pedestrian improvements at Route 1 and Forston Woods and a southbound turn lane. Number 4, Onville Road widening. I guess I'll stop there in case there are any questions before I move on to the further actions that was taken at that meeting.
Sure, I have a question. That first program you mentioned, 208, multimodal improvements, I don't recall hearing about that project before. What's that all about?
Hey, Matthew Lahane, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I can. So the Route 208 multimodal improvements, it's basically looking kind of 2 aspects. So one is the actual roadways. I believe it's the intersection of US 1 and Route 208, if I'm not mistaken. But there's further information on our website on that if you want to get more specifics. But the Route 208 and Route 1 intersection, as well as looking at the Route 208 park and ride lot. The plan is to upgrade the bus shelter there, and then also provide funding for a Fred bus route from that station all the way to the Fredericksburg VRE station.
Well, that was already mentioned in another project.
Yeah, there were a couple of projects, Rupert, where there were a few elements that were proposed for each project in hopes of that being selected. So the Spotsylvania Route 208 project, as Matthew said, sort of had a handful of elements to it, some of which were also incorporated into other projects. That was one that the Tack put forward as a replacement project after there were a few projects that were not approved in February.
Right, thanks.
And the other reason it should sound familiar to us is because of the studies that were ongoing and we've talked about over the last several months along that corridor, the Lafayette corridor.
Any other questions about those projects?
And it's Melvin. The one you said off of Garrisonville Road, is that you said it made the smart scale?
Yes, it was submitted for smart scale, and it's described here in the minutes as Garrisonville Road widening.
Okay. Did they say where? It's not the whole road, is it?
Adam, do you have any details on that?
No, Melvin, it's not the whole road. I'm looking at the slides here from the policy committee meeting. What Stafford submitted for the slides for this project says widen approximately 1.4 miles between Eustis and Shelton Shop to 6-lane divided roadway with median.
Oh, from Eustis to Shelton Shop?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, and one quick correction on the Route 208 park and ride lot. The specific project I was mentioning was actually not the Route 128 intersection. That is a Spotsylvania local project. This project more specifically refers to on the other side of 95, looking at a number of intersections there at South Point Parkway, Stony Creek Drive as well. So
let me ask you another question. When did this project for the Garrisonville work? When is there a year time frame? Is that the next few years or?
This is something that if it receives funding from the Smart Scale pot for this next round, which we'll find out probably sometime early 2021 if it does.
Oh, okay. Okay.
At some point within the next 6 years thereafter. So it's a pretty long process to receive the Smart Scale funding. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
question about that as well. Was the bond referendum that Stafford County had passed related to that smart scale funding? Was that included as part of their, I guess, bid for that widening of 610?
Essentially, yes, they are leveraging some of that funding from the bond referendum in hopes of a better score. Basically, for smart scale, the process is you take the total value of the project and divide it by the total cost. So if the total ask that you're asking smart scale to fund is less, that gives your project a better chance. So yes, they are, for the Garrisonville project, leveraging some of the bond referendum.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll move on to the other actions that were taken during that meeting. They also approved amending the fiscal year 2018-2021 Transportation Improvement Program to add Route 1 upgrades between William and Caroline Street. Additionally, at that meeting, they approved amending the Transportation Improvement Program to add pedestrian bridge and bike and pedestrian access to the Brook and Leland station platforms, the train station platforms. Also at that meeting, they approved 3 different documents that will be going out for public review starting next week. That is an amendment to the fiscally constrained long-range transportation plan, and endorsing the air quality conformity analysis for that, as well as approving both of those documents to go before the public for a 30-day public comment period, which we'll be talking more about that later on in this meeting. There's a discussion item specifically on that. And those are the highlights of the policy committee meeting. So with that, Chairman, I believe we're at this number right here.
Yeah, public comment now. And you have one to read?
Yes, I do. Do we have anyone on the line that wants to make a verbal comment? No? Okay. So we have one comment that was submitted to be read tonight from Joe Brito. Briefly, it's building a road and trail grid system that encourages and enhances bus ridership. Joe writes that the pandemic will certainly help encourage a change of behavior. More people will be working from home and offices in our region, which will change traffic patterns and will impact our local roads. The focus should be more on local roads, trails, and improving bus service. Improving our regional transportation system in such a manner means building a road and trail network in conjunction with the Fred bus service, so as they complement and enhance one another. The new road should include bus stop lanes next to the trail and bike racks. To go green, we must build the infrastructure in the population centers which serves the business and public facilities that generate the most traffic. My road and trail proposal, Joe writes, does just that. It links the densely populated area of Garrisonville with Embry Mill Park, with Stafford Hospital, with Stafford Courthouse, with the Public Safety Building, with Fire and Rescue Station number 2, with a proposed dog park, with high-density zoned Centerport Parkway, with Staffordshire, with a proposed elementary school site, with a proposed high school site, with high-density England Run, with Stafford's biggest employers, Geico and Intuit, with Fire and Rescue Station number 12, with Stafford Lakes, with the new ball stadium, with the Expo Center, with Central Park, with apartments in Central Park, with Mary Washington Hospital, and with the Spotsylvania Mall. All of those subdivisions, businesses, and public facilities linked together will cut back on traffic congestion, reduce driving time, reduce air pollution, create fuel savings, reduce rescue time, and open up our transportation grid for drivers to have more options to avoid the most congested areas. The trail will encourage people to use it or walk to a bus stop to get to work and those density locations. If it rains while they're at work, they can take the bus home. 2 major buses can ride on an hour loop that would average half hour apart in 2 different directions. One running clockwise, starting in Aquia, going to south on Route 1, turning right on Harrison Road, turning right on a new road, heading north to the mall, Central Park, Geico, Garrisonville Road, and south again. Anyone that wants to see my 14-page presentation can view it on my Facebook page. And this again is Joe Brito from Stafford County, Hartwood District. If you would like his link, please send FAMPO an email and we can send that to you. I believe we're at number 7 now.
Okay, that closes the public comment. Number 7, discussion action items, public comment period summary for the 21-24 tip.
Sure, you should have all received the full report of the public comment period report, but just to recap before you vote to approve these documents in a moment, the public comment period for the draft transportation improvement program opened on March 3rd and closed on April 2nd. A formal public hearing was held on March 16th. Most of the public feedback was collected from 11 library outreach events where staff and committee members, thank you specifically FAMPO staff who participated in those library events. We spoke with 167 people, most of whom participated in polling to identify their transportation priorities. And 20 of those provided us verbal or written comments. Social media efforts brought in additional feedback from 54 people. Furthermore, 10 comments were received via email. It's important to note that no comments were received at the formal hearing. Again, that was the day of or the day after the stay-at-home order by the governor. And no comments were received at all on the related air quality conformity analysis that you will also be endorsing later in this meeting. Through public polling, we identified that there were 4 common transportation priorities among members in the region. These include increasing sidewalks and bike paths, improving safety for pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers, improving the FRED bus service, and improving the rail service. Overall, public comment findings are that while that the 21-24 draft transportation improvement program that you will be endorsing in just a moment will contribute to fulfilling these public priorities, it does not overall prioritize the FRED bus service or rail improvements. However, it is important to note when you are deciding whether to vote for or against the transportation improvement program that the TIP can be and is very often amended to reflect the needs of the region. And so I think that brings us to approval of resolution to approve the TIP and the air quality conformity analysis.
Okay, so it shows Adam as POC for that, but he doesn't need to expand any further. Is that what you're saying?
Unless there are any questions, I know we have a few new members. Any questions before voting on the TIP of exactly what is the TIP or the air quality conformity analysis?
And new members are certainly authorized and welcome to abstain if they'd like to. I mean, you're asking you to weigh in on something that you may not have much background in at all or haven't even had time to review. So there's no problem with abstaining. Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the FY 21-24 TIP and air quality conformance analysis report?
So moved.
Second, Ken Hoag.
It was Al. I moved.
Okay. Is there anyone who, first of all, is anyone who would like to abstain from this?
Yeah, I would, John.
Okay. Is there anyone opposed to approving this resolution?
I would oppose it.
All right. I'm going to assume now all else are in favor of approving this resolution. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Dave, can you hear me? Was there a, hello? Was there an
Yes, we can.
objection?
There was
Oh.
no objection that I heard.
I heard
Okay.
Rupert. I'm sorry, Rupert Allen. I mean, Rupert.
Rupert objected?
Correct.
Okay, that's what.
All right. Okay, and that motion is approved, and we'll go forward to the PC. Next, like item is the approval of Resolution 20-35 endorsing the air quality conformity determination for the fiscal years 2021 to 2024 TIP associated item. Is there any? Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Dave Swan, I'll second it.
Thanks, Dave. Swan. Is there any discussion? Is there anyone who wants to abstain from this? Is there anyone who's opposed to this resolution? Okay, I'm not hearing any abstainers or opposers. So I am about to say that this motion is approved. Okay, done. Liz, moves us up to the upcoming public comment period for an amendment to the 2045 Long Range Transportation Plan.
So I will turn it over to Stacy here in just a minute to go over some of the public involvement efforts that will be upcoming for this public comment period. But just before that, briefly to remind everybody sort of the general idea behind the 2045 LRTP amendment and its associated conformity analysis. This process has been effectively on hold since early April. We needed our Tack to be able to authorize or to approve the draft conformity report before it could go up for public comment. So since they were not able to meet until May 4th, that's why this process has effectively been on hold. So what this amendment incorporates is an update to the financially constrained project list within the LRTP. So if I could ask Stacy to scroll to one of the project tables, just as an example, I think there should be one coming up not too far from here. So the way that SAMPO has traditionally broken these out is we have a list of highway projects, which also includes sort of local roads, also includes bike ped. We have a transit and then transportation demand management list. And then we have a planning and sort of PE studies list. And so within this document, Stacy, if you'll keep scrolling, yeah, right there. So that's a good example of one of our project lists. And so this is effectively what is being amended. And the three sort of primary components that have changed is there have been a few projects that have been closed out financially and can thus be removed from this list. There are new Smart Scale Round 3 projects, so the 2018 cycle, that have been added to this that are receiving federal funding or are slated to within this window out to 2045. There are also the new TIP window projects. So when we go from the fiscal years 18 to 21 TIP, all the way to the 21 to 24 TIP, which is what we just approved, that triggers an amendment to the LRTP. The TIP is effectively, the project list is a subset of this constrained list. And then lastly, there were a few projects from Stafford's bond referendum and then a few new bike ped projects within the city that were added to this list. So before we turn it over to Stacy to go over what we're about to do for public comment on this, I did want to see if there's any questions about the document itself.
So for the new people, the good news is, I mean, this isn't a long, extensive document with a lot of detail in it. And but it's going out for what we're about to do, and we don't need to approve this, but what we're talking about is putting it out for public comment. So you will now have time, because of that process, to get into the document, come up with your own comments and concerns, questions, and resolve some of those, or resolve those over this next over the typical 30-day process that Stacy's about to tell us about.
Before you put it out there in the public comment, I think there's a typo you want to correct on page 166.
Where is it?
Stacey, you're probably going to have to scroll to it.
Oh, I see. The Adobe pages aren't the same. 67. Right. There we go.
Up at the top where you've got average annual cost and total cost, that dividing line between the two is off by a space. It should be shifted over one space to the left.
Okay, Leah's taking minutes. Leah, could you please record that on page 166? We need to make those changes. Thank you, Rupert.
Sure thing.
So I'll talk briefly about the planned public involvement comment period for these for this document. So the same is going to be a little bit on section C right here, if you can see on your screen. We're going to run concurrent public comment periods for the constrained long-range plan project list, as well as the associated air quality conformity analysis with that. And what we're going to talk about in the next item, our unified planning work program. We're going to combine all those public comment periods, and it's going to start on Wednesday, May 20th, so that's next week, after the policy committee formally approves this, to go out for public review, and it's going to end on June 19th. So between Wednesday and June 19th, you'll have an opportunity to review these documents and provide comment. We also encourage you to share it with your community and your friends, family. I will be making some webinars and posting them to our website. I will email all committee members a link as well, and those webinars will help walk you through how to review and comment on these documents. It's kind of been the trend for all metropolitan planning organizations to get away from making people read through these really lengthy technical documents and then providing comment. So our hope is to really simplify these webinars so that you can provide some direct feedback on projects rather than the document as a whole. So please look forward to those emails and share those links when they become available next week on Wednesday. Unless there are any questions, that brings us to C, upcoming comment period, Mr. Chair.
Yep, ready to move on.
Oh, Adam, you're muted.
Thanks, Stacy. So I'll jump back in here to go over some updates to the FY21 UPWP draft, as well as a UPWP FY20 amendment. So the Unified Planning Work Program is essentially our sort of work document for the year. So it spells out everything that our staff is going to undertake over the course of the next fiscal year, which starts on July 1st and runs through June 30th of 2021. So we've worked with our consultant at Cambridge Systematics, who actually helped out with this process a little bit last year before most of our current staff makeup was here, to go through over the last 4 weeks or so and basically update the FY20 document. It's not a massive overhaul. in any sense to what the FY20 UPWP looks like. But as I mentioned, this does sort of spell out all of our planned activities for the next year. Many of these are ongoing MPO activities, and some are carryover from FY20. So we are working with GWRC to finalize the budget piece. So the document that you're looking at here that's in the packet for tonight is the same that we distributed to our TAC. There has been quite a bit of work that has gone into the financial component of this. So Stacy, if I could ask you to scroll to the last page, what that's going to show is sort of a placeholder funding table. And we will, as of this evening, have a finalized draft that will be in our policy committee packet. So I would encourage everybody who's interested to check our website tomorrow evening, and you will see all of these numbers populated. Basically, there's a number of sort of inner workings and sort of variables that affect what these numbers shake out to be each year. And so that is sort of a placeholder table for all intents and purposes for what's in your packet for tonight. But I did want to ask if anybody has had the chance to skim through some of the work activities, if there are any questions on the FY21 draft. Okay, so Stacy, could you go ahead and scroll down to the next item? Yeah. So one interesting thing that we have sort of undertaken this year is we lost both of our senior level staff in early December. And so what that has meant for our budget is that we are considerably underspent this year, which in some ways is a nice thing to have to deal with, but in other ways it has sort of thrown a wrench into our funding outlook for FY21. And so what we have submitted a request to VDOT for is what's called a deprogramming request. And what that entails is that for our PL funds, which are funds that come from federal highways, go to the states and then are administered to the NPOs on a population basis. What typically happens is that you would carry any excess funds over. So the NPO doesn't lose those funds, but it would go 2 fiscal years out. So anything we don't spend in FY20 would normally go to FY22. And so what we have asked VDOT to do is deprogram them to do a direct carryover to FY21 so that we can move that over directly. And so in doing that, one of the processes in place is that our committees have to approve an amendment to the current year UPWP. So Stacy, likewise, I'll ask you to scroll down to the funding table on the last page. It's actually, I think, going to be the second to last page. Yeah. So highlighted in yellow are essentially updates. And what we have done is we've submitted that request to VDOT to take $140,000, which is our projected excess amount for PL funds, and move it over directly to FY21. So all of these numbers in yellow are lower than what they were when this was adopted and approved at the start of the fiscal year back this past July. And so there's a note on the very last page, so Stacy, if you will scroll to that page now, that basically explains what we're looking to do with this amendment, taking that $140,000 off of the original amount for PL funds and move it over directly to FY21. So I'd be happy to take any questions on the deprogramming request or the UPWP amendment for FY20.
No questions really, but there's a typo on page 8 that you might want to correct.
Sorry, I had my mic off. Here is not page 8, according to Adobe. Let's see. Right here, page 8.
There are 4 bulleted paragraphs. The first bulleted paragraph on the 3rd line, it says which is comprised of, should be which is composed of.
Okay. Leah, who is taking minutes, if you can note that under Federal Highway Planning PL funds to change this right here, the which is comprised of. And that is page 8 of the fiscal year 2020 UPWP. Thank you, Rupert.
Sure thing.
Thanks, Rupert.
Adam, one question on this one, since this is an amendment. Are there, I mean, other than what you described there as far as the funding, are there significant changes or other major changes we should focus in on this as considered the amendment of this action? Or is
The only thing that we have touched in this document is the funding tables. So there are no other content table text changes that we've made.
Okay, thanks. Because I mean, what's swimming in my head is, you know, of all these documents, several hundred pages of documents for us to review, to weigh in on, to vote to approve. It's quite challenging. So anything we can do to focus our attention on the key changes and that sort of thing would always be welcome. So thanks, Adam.
Sure.
Okay, and then we can move to okay, you guys talk on this now, Stacy?
Just to add, so this is also going to be, the public comment period for this is also going to be run concurrently with the long range transportation plan amendment and related air quality conformity analysis. But I have been working with Adam on trying to get like simplified statements of what exactly are we changing so that members of the public and committee members can comment directly on those changes that pertain to these amendments. So the webinars will also direct you to links in a survey format that, rather than provide a written comment, you'll be able to click on certain things, whether you agree or have a concern with certain elements of these amendments. So hopefully that will allow for some simplification of the feedback in this process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so how will we get to that? Or will you trigger us to that, but through emails to the committee? Thanks.
Yeah, I will send a message around to the committee. It's also going to be on the FAMPO website under public involvement. There's a menu at the top of our homepage, and public involvement is one of the menu options. And if you click on that, that's where we will always have our public comment period documents and directions on how to review. Those will be posted on Wednesday. Assuming that the policy committee on Monday approves for the public comment period to start on Wednesday, but we don't have any indication at this point that they won't. So you can look forward to seeing an email on that on Wednesday, as well as that being added under public involvement menu options on our website.
Thanks. Next is the Tack recommendations for the CMAQ.
And there's a little bit of a caveat here in that for DI there, the endorsement of their recommendation, what they effectively did on May 4th was defer any potential allocations to their June TAC meeting. So we went back and forth a little bit with VDOT as far as what the timing would be. Usually any CMAQ and RSTP money that gets allocated within an MPO coincides with the VDOT 6-year improvement program schedule, and that schedule is on hold right now. So any allocations that are made would coincide not with the 6-year improvement program this time around, but with the Smart Scale process. So those Smart Scale applications are due August 1st, and any funding, CMAQ or RSTP, that any of our localities want to be able to leverage for any of our projects would need to be done in time for the August 1st submission. So the TAC decided to take this next month to continue to sort of work out what they'd like to propose and then come back with a recommendation on June 1st. But I would ask Stacy to go ahead and pull up the highlighted link real quick, the FY26 scoring, up one.
Is that the correct one you want to see?
No, sorry, the one right before that. So we were asked by the policy, yes. So we were asked by the policy committee to get one application from each jurisdiction that would be considered for FY26 CMAQ funding. And these are as simple as we could sort of put together in a PDF. Traditionally, what FAMPO has sort of distributed is just what you'll see on page 4 of this document, where it's just a score. And so part of what we wanted to make an effort to do this time around is be as transparent as we can about how those scores come to be. And so we've actually put in the first 3 pages each of the metrics and what score they received, along with a quick note just saying why we gave that score in particular. So sometimes it's a solely quantitative measure. So it's traffic count, or it's we use a tool to determine impact on air quality, that sort of thing. Other times it's a metric that's weighed against other projects in that category. This time around, since we were only asked to get 3 projects, they were all in 3 separate categories. And so if we have something that says, you know, you get 10 points if you're the highest project in a certain category, and you're the only one, by default, you get 10 points. So there's a number of sort of, I would say, kind of caveats to the scoring. And one thing that I will point out as well is that we have adjusted the scoring for Ville Road. We've moved that from a 50 up to a 77 after talking with some of our Tack members after the Tack meeting. So like the UPWP documents that we're working on for our meeting packet for the policy committee, this will also be updated just slightly to reflect that additional score for the Ville Road project. But like I said, this is something that is supposed to inform the policy committee on how they decide to make allocations. And part of a larger conversation that's going on that some of you who have been around for a while would know about is that the scoring methodology and the sort of the methodology to allocate funds has a number of sort of places where it could really be improved. And so our jurisdictions, our local planning staff are working with us to, over the course of the rest of this year, going probably to November or December of 2020, updating the methodology so that there's no subjective measures, there's no weighted measures, so where it's one project against another, because what if you only have one, that sort of issue. So part of that larger conversation is you know, taking place as well. So again, here, I'd be happy to take any questions.
So Adam, is the 3 projects that are listed in the scores, I think you said that you've changed the score so that Ville Road would actually move to 2nd place. Is that what I'm hearing?
Can you scroll down, Stacy? I believe that's the case.
I mean, that's not what's shown here in front of us, but you're saying that what we're shown here in front of us has been changed. Is that right?
It has been updated after we've put this documentation together for this meeting, yes.
Okay, so for me, I mean, CMAC is congestion, and I guess I'm talking a little bit for the new folks per education or whatever, congestion management and air quality. I was trying to figure out how much a connection between Idlewild and VCR helps reduce or manage congestion and or improve air quality. Could you speak to that a little bit, as opposed to the other projects, for example?
Yep. Part of the eligibility requirement to receive CMAQ funds is a multimodal element. So if all you were trying to do is widen a roadway, for example, that's not going to be eligible for CMAQ. So part of what we looked at is making sure there's no explicit checklist that we have, and there's no explicit federal guidance that says this is good and this isn't. VDOT, I suppose, has the ultimate authority there, but part of what we wanted to make sure of is that each of these projects would have some type of element that would contribute to one of those 2 factors, either reducing congestion or improving air quality. So with the VCR trail, for instance, if you've got people that are able to utilize a bike ped path, that theoretically, if people are able to make trips and enjoy that facility, then that is something that would improve air quality.
Excellent. That's good. It helps educate us and make us understand the complexities of the various funding streams and the initiatives and what they're proposing to do and attempting to do and how they all fit together. So thanks for that, Adam.
Sure.
All right.
I do have a question, John. If this was being put together and these numbers are being flushed out in an objective fashion, what sort of considerations are being taken in place if you take it over to the technical committee that wouldn't be shown normally when you're filling this form out?
I'm not quite sure if I follow the question there, John.
Well, you said that it started out this the Onville Road was at 50 and then now it's at a 77. If it was filled out originally and ended up with 50, what other considerations are taken into account that would then elevate it to that higher number?
Gotcha. Stacy, could you go ahead and pull the PDF back up? And I can explain a couple of the variables that were updated. Basically, John, to answer that, there's a couple places where, and let me back up just one step. Our staff makeup right now is relatively new, just as you are to this committee, and none of us have actually taken part in the scoring process before. And so what we tried to do is, using our methodology sort of guidebook, is just do everything sort of straight up by the book. And then for anything where there was kind of a question, we would rely on how things have been done in the past. So for instance, one of the scoring metrics for the category that the Onville Road project is in, which I believe is roadway capacity improvements is the title of it, is geometric, impact there, which is on, Stacy, if you could sort of move the little pointer that you've got to trying to describe where it is. It's in the column that you're in. If you'll scroll down a little bit, if you'll move the mouse down one more. So right here, one of the metrics that we're asked to gauge is how many roadway geometric deficiencies are being corrected by this project. And there are no explicit guidelines for our staff to use in the methodology document. So when we looked at what was done last year and the previous year, everything was just given a 0. So not to say that that's right or wrong. I can't really speak too well to why that approach may or may not be justified, but that's what we went with since that's all we had to go on. So when we talked with our TAC leads about that, in their mind, they said, if the roadway improvements are conforming to VDOT roadway design guidelines, theoretically, wouldn't that correct any deficiencies? And I said, if that's what we want to go with for the scoring, then I think that makes sense and it can be justified. So it was kind of a collaborative process between our staff and our TAC representatives to do this as by the book that we could, so that it's as objective as possible, given the limitations of what we were facing with the methodology. So again, we didn't have a data set to measure geometric impact, nor were we provided one by the applicant in this case. So it's one of those things where when we have an updated methodology, which again should be at some point later on this calendar year, that won't be a question. But so that is one metric that we went from 0 to 18. So we gave it full marks. Another one, I'm not sure exactly which one it was. Matthew Lahane, if you recall, feel free to chime in here.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe
So one of them was the under environmental impacts under neighborhood. That was changed from a 4 to an 8 to represent that as no significant impact to community elements. It only has positive impacts to the community. Rather than half, it was given full points.
Right, thank you. So John, I hope that answers your question there to some extent.
Well, it does. It seems like just being able to understand the definitions of the terms was that issue.
Sure.
Yeah, and if you do want to learn any more about this process, there's a CMAQ prioritization methodology with what was currently done that outlines a little bit on our website. You can read up a bit more on it.
That's a good question and enlightening responses. Thank you all. Are we moving now to the actual action item, the endorsement? Okay, so I don't know if you guys have looked at this. I guess maybe Stacy, you're going to open it up for us. it's overwhelming to me. I don't.
Yeah, Dave, if I could chime in just a moment here. We don't need to do any endorsement yet since Tack has not actually made an official recommendation. So this is something that can take place in June. This is sort of a pending working spreadsheet that is being updated. We've actually made a few updates even today to it. So it's something that's sort of an evolving document that the Tack will land on an allocation recommendation on June 1st.
Excellent. And so then the Tack will meet on it again before we meet, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, good. Because as the chair, I go to the Tack meeting and I listen to the experts because they are the technical advisors. I pick up a lot and learn from sitting through that. And things have not been the same the last couple of months for the how easy it is to do that or how much you get out of it when you actually even attend the meeting. So I'm glad. So
yep.
So actually we should have amended our agenda to say this was not an action item today, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, but all right, good. What's next? Now is an endorsement of the tip to add UPCs from the I-95 corridor study. So in this case, this is one that's fairly easy to follow because if we've been interested in the I-95 corridor study, we've got briefings on it, we've been able to attend meetings. And so I think the intent, and Adam, you correct me here, is to roll in and add to amend the tip so we've now included this extra guidance and actual potential funding. And most of it, as I recall from reading, was all statewide. It wasn't specific. We will get a piece of the statewide funding, I think, is kind of, but set me straight, Adam.
Nope, Dave, you're exactly right. That is a very good summary of what this is. Basically, these are a handful of operational improvements that came out of that study. So there's no funding that they're asking for our NPO to provide or anything like that. This is coming from the state, and it involves everything from cameras to signage to operations to remove vehicles that have been in accidents, that sort of thing. So a lot of operational things, no capital improvements.
Yeah. So any of you who did not get the chance to read this one and want to abstain, that's fine. But it's pretty vanilla adding of statewide capabilities that may or may not, or to some degree, or more or less, will affect our local community. So do I hear a motion to approve, to endorse resolution amending the 1821 tip to add UPCs from the I-95 corridor study?
I move. So moved. Melvin.
Is there a second?
Second, Ken Pogue.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah.
Is there any discussion?
This is Rupert. I hate to see another $1 million being tossed down that rat hole, so I would be against it.
The $1 million was just for the plan, for additional refinement of the plans, I think.
I'm sorry?
I think the $1 million was just for additional refinements of the plans. There was much more money to do specific things in it as well. So it's more than $1 million.
All the worse. I mean, it was a bad idea from day one to allow this road to be used for free and therefore get all crapped up and expanded. So we spent billions of dollars on it already, and I hate to see another dollar spent because all it's done is add to our problems. It hadn't solved any problems. So I would encourage people to vote against it, or to vote against any project that expands or the interstate highway system. It's been it's been bad news since day one. Although I guess if we'd stuck with 2 lanes like the original concept was to move military vehicles in the event of war, that would have been okay. But that original intent has been shot down, wasted, caused environmental damages, caused a huge hole in the national debt, and so it doesn't have any redeeming qualities to speak of. And so this motion and any others that put money towards the interstate system, I would be against.
Sorry, any other discussion?
I'm
Okay.
just wondering what would be the alternative.
The alternative is congestion pricing.
Well, you still got a highway out there.
Yeah, I think the question really is, given that we have a highway system currently and it needs things like signage and towing and that sort of thing, do we want to be able to, have an eye on that? And I think the time to decide whether we ought to have had an interstate was 1950,
That's correct, but we blew it. No, the alternative is to institute congestion pricing on these roads so that we wouldn't have to be scraping up money for maintenance. The tolls would take care of it. And also the congestion pricing would keep the congestion down so we wouldn't have to spend any more money on asphalt. So, yeah, in lieu of this, I think we should all be pushing for congestion pricing to pay these bills.
Any other
Well,
discussion?
if you've ever used congestion pricing 20 years ago in Richmond and the pain of doing that, then I think you probably rethink that solution.
I was there. I remember
Yeah.
it. And it produced the desired result. It encourages a lot of people to stay off the road. That's the whole point.
Well, when people stay off the road, they go through the neighborhoods, and we're having that problem right now in southern Stafford.
When people stay off the road, sometimes they move closer to work and take the bus.
Well, in the long haul, yes, but in an economy that's not doing so well, that's going to be a problem.
Well, we're supposed to
remember the roads in the plan have to weather all kinds of conditions.
We're supposed to be looking
good
at the
times.
long haul. Unfortunately, nobody seems to be looking at the long haul. It's always just fix this problem and fix that problem and spend more money. If we were looking at the long haul, we wouldn't be spending money on a lot of these projects.
Yeah, I agree, but it's hard to establish a baseline to go the long haul when you have so much sunken cost. And right now we've got a lot of sunken costs. So what do? You ease up on the improvements over time, but that will take 25 years.
Well, that's more of an emotional reaction than a logical reaction. But that's what keeps the politics going.
Well,
anyway,
politicians have to get elected.
Yep. That's one of the flaws in the system. Anyway,
Yeah.
you know my vote on this one.
Okay, does anyone want to abstain on this one?
I abstain. Dustin.
Dustin, thanks. Anybody else? Okay, I'm good. Anybody who votes against this, I assume Rupert votes against it. Is there anyone else opposed to this endorsement of the resolution? Okay, then I assume that everyone else is in favor, and this this endorsement has been approved. Okay, we have an update now on the rural work program. The next few items actually it's just kind of interesting. It seems to be more of a growth and extension. I mean, we've always had the rural work and small area plans in some of the other communities have always been something we've done. I shouldn't say always. I haven't been here always. Has been something we've done, but I think it's getting a lot more emphasis right now with these next three items we're going to talk about. So, thanks.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Carrie, a transportation planner here with Sampo, and I wanted to just talk about the Bowling Green Small Area Plan. It's part of the George Washington Regional Commission rural work program for FY20. Work on this product began last fall. This document is also serving as the transportation element for Bowling Green's upcoming comprehensive plan. And in that form, it was approved by their Planning Commission March 9th. Stacy, do you want to just sort of scroll through it slowly, please? Would that be okay?
Can you see it scrolling? I'm scrolling.
No, I can't, but my connection is really bad. So I'll
Okay.
just trust that you're. The small area plan lays out the existing transportation network for Bowling Green, including the highway network, areas for potential safety improvements, and traffic counts, and gives recommendations. A separate bike and pedestrian section shows existing infrastructure and gives recommendations to help build a safer and more connected network in the town. Bowling Green drew from the recommendations in both of these sections to develop their Smart Scale candidate project for round 4. The small area plan will be presented to the GWRC and FAMPO boards next Monday night. I'm happy to take any questions on this.
Carrie, I'm still scrolling, so they're probably just gathering their thoughts.
Yeah, I've lost connection to the visual, so.
Ken, have you got anything to add to this?
Well, I'm scrolling through it. This is my first view. Can she sort of hit the highlights of, you said there's some potential proposals, actionable things in here? Is that toward the back, or can you hit the highlights of what is being potentially proposed or discussed?
Carrie, I have up on this screen right now the recommendations. Is that the page I should be on? Recommendations page?
What page is that?
The
11
first
25.
Sorry,
11
guys.
through 20. Okay, okay. I got 7, 8, 11. Okay. Ah, here we go. Okay. All right. I will now check them out and then quietly listen.
Okay. Just to give you an overview on those, the first set there of the recommendations are from the last comprehensive plan for Bowling Green. They asked me to keep those in because they had not been acted on yet. So that's the first 8 of them. The next group are the different intersections from the 301-207 study that VDOT did. And that rounds out the highway recommendations. There's a map there to sort of show you where those are. The bike head recommendations are based on the work that I and my colleagues did last fall. And they are basically filling in places that don't have sidewalks and building the bicycle network throughout town with signage, shoulder improvements, and finishing the bike lane on Broadus Avenue, which currently goes nowhere.
Yeah.
Another big part of that is adding safety, making much safer crossings at the intersection. You can see on the map on page 16.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, interesting. Now, as this gets presented Monday, what would be the next milestones in implementing any or all of this?
So,
timelines.
Right. Basically, like I said, it's being incorporated into Bowling Green's comprehensive plan. So it's going to be a source for them for future projects as they go forward for smart scale candidate projects, for transportation alternatives projects, anything like that. They can draw from this, from these recommendations.
Is this going to be presented to the superintendents? I'm thinking particularly Nancy Long.
Well, this is for the town of Bowling Green.
Yeah, well, she's okay.
Yeah, she's Port Royal.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And I would
thank
chime
you.
in here real quick. This is Adam. When this is presented to the GWRC board on Monday, Nancy is on the board, so she will be able to see this and hear the presentation from Carrie.
Good point.
Okay, thank you.
And we are going to, correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, but as part of FY21, we're going to be doing something similar for Port Royal. Am I right?
We have it programmed in our FY21 document, and we will see if they would like us to pursue that work. So we have the funds for it. We have a plan, but it's kind of up to them if they'd like us to do the same thing.
Now, when you say up to them, are you talking about the Port Royal Council and the mayor?
Largely, and their staff.
Okay.
It would be the stakeholders that would have an interest in our work in Port Royal. This was actually programmed, a similar work product that we've just done for Bowling Green in Port Royal for this year. And it seems that after the document was approved, interest fell off a little bit. So we wanted to include it in case interest does come back to do a small area plan there for Port Royal.
Okay. Well, I'm still a little confused. Who are the principals or the stakeholders that would be your audience?
For this document or for the Port Royal document?
For the Port Royal. You said someone needs to express interest.
That would primarily be their town council, and we would be working with their staff. So if their staff is available to provide input and sort of be at the table for the work, and then if there is an interest from the town council members for us to pursue it, we have the funds to do it.
Okay, well, I'll communicate that because it's a group of individuals. There's no staff. Trust me. You flatter us.
But we have talked with Allison a little bit, who has given us some indication that there is potentially a little bit more interest in doing this next year for Port Royal.
Okay. Can I have Allison's last name?
Fincham.
Spell that, please.
Finchum.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Sorry for jumping.
Okay, now we have next is a study to prioritize transportation needs in King George County.
Hey guys, how are you? My name is Matthew Decatur. I'm a intern with SAMPO and GRC, and starting about February as a part of the FY20 Rural Work Plan, we've been doing a study to develop and prioritize the transportation needs in King George County. Stacy, you can scroll down. Keep going. Stop. So after doing a brief overview of the region, you can keep scrolling. After looking at the region, we looked at different projects that have already been proposed in various different studies, such as the 301-207 Arterial Preservation Plan, the FY 2025 6-year improvement program projects, FY20 Smart Scale, potential for safety improvement intersections and segments. Looking at those, we sort of collected the different projects that have been identified that are in need of improvements, and the purpose of the study was to sort of prioritize them for future smart scale applications, that sort of thing. Keep scrolling. Yeah, so we looked at the current infrastructure and the land cover data. You can keep scrolling. Keep scrolling. Yeah, so those are the studies that we were looking through, and stop here. So this is the sort of our basis for what we've been looking at, the 301 suggestions, the PSI segments and intersections, and of course the 4 smart scale projects for FY20, which 3 of which have been funded through this year. The only one that was not funded was the Route 206 and 218 right turn lane. Keep scrolling. So now that we have all of these projects sort of collected, the question is, how do you prioritize them? So we base this off of the smart scale prioritization methodology, since King George is in category D, which that prioritizes economic development and safety. So we looked at crash data. Specifically, this crash data, as you can see here, it was divided into the crash severity. So if it's, a fatality, or if it's just, a non-visible injury, or just a property damage only crash. And using this crash severity, we use the equal property damage only methodology. You can scroll down. So it sort of weighs the crash points. Keep scrolling down. It weighs the crash points based off of how severe the crash is. So those were the fatalities since 2013. Scroll down. And as you can see there, one fatal crash. Let's scroll up. Yeah, so one fatal crash is the equivalent to 567 property damage only crashes, and then this is a nationally accredited severity to look at when you're doing a heat map. So scroll down. As you can see, the heat map there, it sort of focuses on the areas that are most prevalent for crashes. Keep scrolling. And of course, besides safety, we also looked at economic development. So if you keep scrolling, and those are the bike head crashes as well. We also looked at zoning data, so areas such as that are used for trade or industry or Dahlgren. Those scored higher in our prioritization over places that are just agriculture. Keep scrolling. And then the third prioritization key was, of course, congestion. So we looked at the volume to capacity ratio, which measures the amount of traffic in a given roadway segment compared to how much it can handle. Keep scrolling. And this is the list of the projects sorted by their total score. So as you can see, the smart scale projects, which are funded for FY20, which we looked at, scored relatively high, which is a good thing, which shows that we're prioritizing our projects pretty well as of today. Keep scrolling down. So scroll down. So the top 3 projects that haven't been funded through Smart Scale, which we would prioritize, would be Owens Drive with US 301, and then Ridge Road with US 301, and then Denny Drive with US 301. And you can sort of look through the descriptions to see what each project calls for. If you scroll to the end, you can see a sort of a satellite image of each of those intersections. So I'll take any questions if you have any for me.
Bob Gates, anything?
I'm sorry?
I said, do you have anything?
No, I've seen most of this before, and I'm studying what's in here now, but I don't see anything to comment on right off.
Good. Okay. All right. Glad you've seen it. And
this is Rupert. Excellent graphics in this work. I really admired that. I'll mention, for the benefit of those that are new to the area, that the name of the town is Dahlgren. I know it's not pronounced the way it's spelled, but it was named after famous Civil War Admiral John A. Dahlgren, and that's the way his family said it. So if you wanna be historically accurate, keep that in mind.
Thank you, Rupert.
Thanks, Rupert. Okay, now we've got the rural work plan update.
Hi everyone, this is Jordan Chandler. I'm a FAMPO transportation planner. So if you want to click on the link and we can scroll through the document together. The template for this document was provided from VDOT. The Rural Work Program received inputs from King George and Caroline counties, as well as the town of Port Royal and Bowling Green. And you can scroll down, and the document is divided into two main sections. Program administration, which talks about reports and regional coordination, other things such as accounting, just more of a managerial level. And then the second part is program activities. And this section is broken down into three subsections. So there are various tasks that are administered by VDOT, or things that VDOT requires us to do throughout the program. That can be things like VTrans meetings and then the fall transportation meetings. And then the next section is broken down into local and regional activities, and this consists of supporting local and regional planning and maintaining the rural long-range transportation plan, which we are finishing up this fiscal year. And then the last section is different studies, and these studies are in King George and Caroline, and I'll go through each of the studies. So the first one from King George is to reinstate the Fred bus transportation service. The next study would be in the King George Industrial Park. There's EDA-owned land that has a railroad through it, and they want to create a commuter rail train station, and then a commuter bike path along the Dahlgren Railroad Heritage Trail. And then moving on to Caroline County, they want to look at a bike and pedestrian small area plan for Ladysmith, a Route 2 corridor study, which was a carryover from this fiscal year. And then the Port Royal Small Area Plan, which is also a carryover from the FY20 Rural Work Program. And then lastly, the Port Royal Canoe and Kayak launch at the town pier. And all of the funding for this is the same funding amount that was from this fiscal year. So the numbers on the last budget page are the exact same. And this will also be reviewed on Monday at the policy meeting. And I can answer any questions.
Okay, no questions. COVID-19 related travel changes.
Yeah, so this is Matthew Lehane. So because of COVID-19, the governor implemented a stay-at-home order. So that was implemented on March 30th, excuse me, and FAMPO staff have completed an analysis on travel patterns to provide insight into how well local residents are adhering to the stay-at-home orders. So we analyzed travel data collected by Streetlight Data to determine how traffic has decreased in the Fredericksburg area since the stay-at-home order took effect. So quick synopsis on Streetlight Data. So they are basically a transportation analytics platform that collects anonymous location data from mobile devices to give them the ability to conduct big data analysis on transportation networks. So what this allowed us to do was they have a vehicle miles traveled data set that was used to determine vehicle travel change for the city of Fredericksburg, Stafford, Spotsylvania, King George, and Caroline counties. So the VMT dataset uses average daily measures from January 2020 as a baseline for comparative change during the COVID-19 pandemic.
So as Matthew said, the county level analysis is from comparing January 2020 data to the last week of March, which is the 29th of March through the 4th of April. And the average decrease for our region is 64%. And then specifically by county, for Stafford, it was around 74%. For the city of Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania, and King George, it was roughly 61 to 66% decrease. And then Caroline County was a 53% decrease. And then moving down to the average daily travel, this looks at specific segments in each road. So along the Rappahannock River crossing on 95, there was a 45% decrease in travel. And then at Route 1 near Aquia Harbor, there was a 51% decrease. And then at Route 1 in Fredericksburg, Falmouth area, there was a 94% decrease. And then at Route 3 in Spotsylvania by the town center, was a 47% decrease. And then Route 301 near Dahlgren was a 48% decrease. And then Route 1 near the Nice River Bridge, or the Nice Bridge in Port Royal, was a 53% decrease. And then lastly, Route 2 north of Bowling Green was a 47% decrease. Oh, 43, sorry, wrote the wrong number.
Yeah, and we're happy to answer any questions anyone has on this. If you do have any, I know we talked about it a bit at the last Seatac info session last month.
Dahlgren, right, Rupert?
You got it. You're a fast study.
Okay, then we got related the so we get the analysis and the survey. Stacey.
Yep, let me see. We don't have a link to that yet, but you should have all received via email the link that takes you to the full report on our COVID-19 transportation changes and improvement suggestion survey. We sent this out a few weeks ago for public feedback to learn how the public's transportation modes have changed since COVID-19 stay-at-home orders. And we also asked them to provide us with feedback on how they think that we can improve safety and access in a new COVID-19 world. Some of the major findings that we found was that, of course, as you all have noticed, just looking out your window or going for a walk, that there's been a significant increase in pedestrian and cyclists. And there's a significant decrease in personal vehicle use. However, at the same time, there's a significant concern among members of the public for the ability to properly social distance on our trails and sidewalks. But we found that there is a wide support to temporarily, let me emphasize that, temporarily repurpose some of our streets or a portion of our streets for bicycle and pedestrian use. This would allow people to spread out further as they're going for a walk or riding their bikes. There also is a significant amount of support for automating crosswalks, so you don't have to actually push a button. It would recognize that someone's there, or it would be on a timer and you would just have to wait. So no need for contact. We also asked in this survey about public transit. And people really said that they will be apprehensive to use such things as a Fred bus or the VRE even after social distancing requirements are lifted. At the same time, we had many public comments stating that there was a great need in the community to have Fred bus service specifically restored for those who rely on that as their primary mode of transportation. So it's interesting because we have this apprehension, but at the same time, we know that there is this need for the Fred bus service in particular. So that's something to consider as committee members of how we can kind of alleviate some of that apprehension and at the same time be able to restore the Fred bus service there. Also, you should get your brains working on maybe some ways that we can improve the trails and the sidewalks, whether that be some taking some parking lanes in downtown and converting those for pedestrian use. That's some possibilities, or closing one-way streets. if you look at, or I'm sorry, not one-way streets, some low-used streets, and using those for just pedestrian and bicyclists. So if you look at the full survey report, you'll see how people weighed in on these particular changes, and what level of support they received. And it's just to inform the decision makers and committee members like yourselves who represent the public on how we can think of transportation going forward with these social distancing requirements in place.
Stacy, was there, in terms of the mass transit aspect, the Fred bus versus, I mean, was there a difference between, I mean, was VRE included in that? I mean, is it possible that some people were afraid to use VRE, so they'll use their cars, but people who had no other options, of course, want to see more from Fred bus?
Right, and yes, that is a good question because the survey did not separate what modes of public transit, VRE, Amtrak versus the Fred bus. So that might be a question that we might want to ask to hone in on Fred bus specifically or VRE specifically. You will see on the full report a pie chart that shows which areas people have decreased their use of. And you'll see that the change is more so for the VRE Amtrak service versus the Fred bus service. So people aren't using the Fred bus service more and they're not using the VRE more, but you will see a decrease in the VRE because a lot of people who take the VRE to Northern Virginia and DC, those are the people who can also afford to use their personal vehicles for the hot lanes, or, you know, they have personal vehicles to get to Northern Virginia.
And of course, right now, there's a lot less traffic on 95.
Yes, and we did, you'll see in the full report, we've got some great and sometimes colorful comments from citizens, which are always great. That, you know, some of the great feedback is, hey, I'm happy that there's no traffic. So for some people, there are positive things coming out of this, I guess we can say that. Any other questions?
Okay, I'm going to now preview the election of officers, which by our bylaws happens in June. So we got to talk about it now because we can get organized and have our candidates, those who are interested. So for those who do not know, the only officers are the chairman and the vice chairman. So that's me and Melvin Allen. And it rotates among the communities, except for not all the communities. It's only Stafford, Spotsylvania, and Fredericksburg. So there is one exception in that the current officers can be extended if that's the will of the board, of the chair of the committee. So in other words, what I'm saying is, if I want to run again, I can. And I will say right now, I'm going to, if you would like me to, or no, I'm going to run again, whether you reelect me or not. And then the only people I would compete against is Spotsylvania. Stafford had it last time, Fredericksburg got it now. So that it either has to be me individually or someone from Spotsylvania. So the little quirk in there, I guess, is that Spotsylvania can do this any way they want. Everybody from Spotsylvania can be a candidate, or they can kind of organize themselves and decide who should be the best candidate from Spotsylvania. That's not addressed in the bylaws. But it could get weird if there's 2 or 3 people from Spotsylvania run, I run, and they kind of balance each other out and I get elected. It shouldn't work that way. The system really tries to rotate you through to the next community. So, but anyway, so that's a little bit that Spotsylvania might want to take on as a consideration. The current vice is Melvin, who is from Stafford. He could be reelected again as well. So now it gets weird. If someone from Spotsylvania is elected, then the vice cannot be from Spotsylvania. If I was reelected, then the vice could not be from Fredericksburg. So I guess what I'm saying is nominate. I think what we'd like to have is for people to nominate themselves to run for the chair, the vice chair, or both, because it might work out that you would end up in the other. So what I think would happen is if we had 2 or 3 nominees, for example, from Spotsylvania, I think what we should do is have a separate vote that picks who from Spotsylvania is the primary. So if I guess what I'm saying, if Spotsylvania does not self-regulate themselves and come up with one nominee, and there are 2 or 3 who want to be put on the ballot, and there's nothing to preclude them from doing that, I think we should do a little sub-elections of just Spotsylvania to see who their primary candidate is, who would then run against me, so that we have it's much more equal that way, and we're not subdividing our votes. And so I think that would be a smarter way to do it than just have 2 or 3 people run for the office. It gives more power and more vote credibility to Spotsylvania, who is the heir apparent, if you will. And then we'll have to do some figuring out who's going to be the vice chair based on who wins the chair. That will adjust the election a little bit. So is that confusing as much as I can make it? But I'm trying to make it as equal and as equitable as I possibly can. So there are questions on that process?
Another alternative would be to use the ranked choice ballot. I don't know whether you saw it or not, but my wife had an excellent letter to the editor yesterday in the paper about ranked choice voting, instant runoff ballots. Another point that I'll mention is that you don't have to nominate yourself. You can nominate somebody else. That's happened a lot in previous meetings that somebody on the committee will nominate another member. And
right. No, where the nominations come, I agree. But it's only Spotsylvania or the incumbent for the chair.
Right. That's the custom. There's no reason. There's no reason to deviate from that. We don't have to stick to it, but there's no reason to deviate from it. What has happened in the past is that there'll just be one nomination for one person, and they'll take a vote on it right there at the table. And if there's more than one nomination, then we shift to paper ballots.
Right.
Usually scraps of paper, but to overcome the concern that you had, that would be one way to go about it, is to do a ranked choice ballot, which means we'd have to print up a little something instead of just using scraps of paper. All right, I'll just throw that in to think about between now and next time.
I'll comment on that. I was actually doing some research on this the other day. I believe they call it a cardinal preference vote, is actually generally more representative of the preferences of the people voting, which is instead of just merely listing which one you like better, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, you actually score each one so we know how much more you like the other person or whatever. And if there's going to be a whole number of candidates, then that would be a more representative system than either of the other 2 options. Just putting that out there.
Well, based on past history, there aren't a whole lot of candidates. So, but I mean, I think the ideal would be if Spotsylvania came with their one preferred candidate, that would make it easy for the rest of us. But I can't say that. And any candidate can nominate somebody. I mean, any committee person can nominate somebody else and or nominate themselves. So the practicality of that may not be practical. So. Other question.
You were talking about if a number of people from Spotsylvania decided to step up and having an election among those candidates. Now, would that be just the people from Spotsylvania voting, or would that be everyone voting?
No, every member who's present gets to vote. Now, if Spotsylvania does something their own ahead of it, and narrows it down themselves, it's outside the committee. That was something you all would do within yourselves. But then there could always be a monkey wrench where somebody from Stafford says, I nominate so-and-so from Spotsylvania or whatever. So, but anyway, unlikely, but possible. So I mean, the kind of the default is that Spotsylvania should be the next, but then again, if anyway, it could work out. So
basically you're proposing a primary election for Spotsylvania County candidates, and then you'll have the general election between you and the Spotsylvania County winner.
Right. Yeah.
Which I could go with that. It's unusual. It's never been done before, but I don't see anything basically wrong with it, rather than it's kind of awkward. But that or a ranked choice ballot or the other ballot that was mentioned, all of those are possible alternatives.
Right, and we might have to do that. You're right. So all right. So I guess the call, and for the meeting minutes, we'd like to put something out, Stacy, to ask people to identify whether they want to be a candidate or if they want to nominate someone. That does not preclude somebody doing it at the meeting, however, but it would be much easier for us if people did in advance, and we can kind of grapple with what the problem is we have at hand in June. So, and it shouldn't take that long. We probably talked about it longer than it's actually going to take to actually happen. But anyway, I was thinking through this process. It's so confusing.
Okay, yeah, sure. I will send an email around just reminding everyone to let us know, and of course they could speak up at the next meeting, but it would be preferable if they gave us advance notice so that we could have something prepared.
And the candidate, we got to put in a little bit. The candidate for chairman can only be from Pennsylvania. Candidates for the vice president could be anywhere, but we could let's just leave it anywhere right now, because we don't know who the chair is going to be. And also remind them that all committee members who are present, it doesn't matter where they're from, King George, whatever, gets to vote. So it's not. All right.
Unless we change the rules, that was a little strong language that they have to be from Spotsylvania. The custom, as I understand it, is to rotate, and we've always done that. But
I'm sorry,
we felt
Rupert.
strongly enough that we wanted to have a candidate from Stafford. I didn't think there was anything in the rules to preclude that.
Rupert, I've looked at the bylaws, and it says the officer position shall rotate.
Okay, it's been changed since I got on board then.
Yeah, we did change. This was in the last rewrite. We went through this quite a bit when we rewrote it. And it says unless successively appointed, which would be me in that case. So it comes down to me or Spotsylvania. I mean, it's
okay.
It's kind of, I'm trying not to talk about myself. I'm offering my service if you guys are happy with my service. That's all I'm trying to say here. So anyway, hopefully it won't be this complicated when we get down to it. But it is a little different this time around.
Yeah, one thing that I forgot to mention, it just dawned on me, is that if there's going to be more than one candidate, it's a little bit difficult to conduct a secret ballot under these conditions.
Why I mean, paper ballots, why not?
Because we're not in the same room together.
Oh, in these conditions. I see what you're saying. Yeah, if we're not able to, that's a good question. Yeah, if we can't, there's got to be a way to do that.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
We do have a brand new survey tool. That's what we've used for our COVID-19 transportation surveys. So it would be possible, if it's okay with the committee as a whole, that you could vote electronically and we can make the survey. Though we could allow for a write-in if somebody took the survey and didn't like any choices and they wanted to write somebody else in, that's also possible. So if you guys would like an electronic survey created, just let me know and I can do that for you.
But you're talking to conduct the vote real time during the meeting?
It would not be real time during the meeting. We don't have the capability of doing that yet.
Okay, yeah, that was Rupert's concern, is how you do this when
Can
we're
we
not.
just do a voice vote? As far as this is Ken, David, you have my vote. I'm done. There.
Can't vote till June.
Second.
Yeah, I don't know if it.
A voice vote is what we usually do because we only usually have one person running.
All right, so we'll put something out and saying, hey, we'd like to get inputs from people. It does not. I don't know if it says it has to be a secret ballot or not. It just says a vote, but I'll look at that. That's a good question.
Hey, Dave Swan, it doesn't have to be a secret ballot, but it's probably much more comfortable if you have whoever's nominated leave the room. You know, like a lot of meetings over our lifetimes. Whoever's nominated leaves the room, and then the vote, you know, if you vote for yourself, fine, you can have that at the end. But I would say either do it with the electronic survey, which sounds like a feasible way to do it, or just have whoever's nominated. If you have two nominees, just have them step out and then vote.
How do we call them back in?
Okay, we'll kind of work. We got a month to figure that out, but in the meantime, we need people we would like people, if possible, to self-nominate or nominate other people, so we know what we're facing when it comes to June. So that's
a good idea, because the way we did it last time was almost spur of the moment.
Yeah,
and it wasn't very well done.
And it wasn't as complicated.
No, it wasn't. But still, we're not complicating it.
Right.
We're just being fair, I think.
That's what I'm trying to do. Exactly.
Yeah. And I applaud you for that. You are.
Thanks. So, all right. That's enough on that. Next, we got what? Correspondence.
Yeah, let me go ahead and pull that up. Unfortunately, we have some sad news to start with. Tim Brown has resigned from Seatac. He provides in this response that we're looking at right now that basically it's just an external workload, and he just doesn't feel that he can make the meetings at the scheduled time, and he's not able to serve in his capacity here. So we will miss Tim Brown on this committee.
We need something to recognize him.
Recognize him, okay.
Yeah, we do in the standard. Thank you.
Let me note that.
Dave, there's a provision in the bylaws that show how to recognize.
Okay.
I don't think we've been doing it the way we should have over the last year, but that's not your fault. There is a provision in there to recognize people when they leave.
Thanks.
And then some good news. As you heard earlier today when we started, we have 2 new committee members, both from the city of Fredericksburg. Mr. John Castor, I'm going to butcher your name, Castellarin, is that correct?
Castellarin.
Thank you. Don't expect me to get that right, and I won't expect you to pronounce my last name, which is also difficult, correctly ever. Okay, so we'll just be on the same page there.
Sounds good. I've had it butchered my whole life.
Okay, yeah, same here. So we also have Matthew Rowe from the city of Fredericksburg. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's good to have you both. Also in correspondence, we have formal approval that the Commonwealth Transportation Board has approved the Smart Scale category change from A to B, which changes our round 4 scoring system for projects. And if you're new to the committee and you say, I have no idea about this category A to B, please just reach out to us after the meeting and we'll go ahead and send you the past minutes on that. It's basically a scoring change for state funding. And then let's see, just finally, we wanted to give you a summary. So on your screen, what you're looking at here is the actual comments that were received from members of the public for the Transportation Improvement Program, the 4-year transportation projects that are programmed for funding. These were the comments that we received. We tried to correspond them to actual projects listed in the Transportation Improvement Program. These are just for your reference. You've already approved at today's meeting the TIP, but this way you can read through them and see what the public is thinking and just kind of get some understanding and feedback on transportation thought in general. Let's see, is there anything else here? Lots of comments if you can see your screen, and I believe that is all. Yeah, so we can move on to staff reports, which will be Adam, I believe.
Thanks, Stacey. Just a couple of staff reports. One is that we are still in the process of hiring a new FAMPO administrator. The executive committee has been tasked with that hire, of course, along with Dr. Millsaps at GWRC. They have done a couple rounds of interviews, and it is still in the works. I don't think to date that an official offer has been made, but we are hoping and keeping our fingers crossed that we'll get a new administrator by the end of the fiscal year. And then also, so Matthew Decatur, our FAMPO intern since September, will be leaving next week. He has accepted a position at the Rappahannock-Rapidan Regional Commission. So this will be Matthew's first full-time job after he graduated college this month. So we congratulate Matthew and certainly wish him the best for the future.
I appreciate that, Adam. Thank you.
Amen.
And that's all for staff reports.
Okay, let's go around the horn here. Anybody from City of Fredericksburg want to make a report? Member report? Okay. How about for Spotsylvania?
Nothing to report.
This is Neil. Nothing to report here either.
Okay. Stafford?
It's just Mel. We don't have nothing to report.
Nothing from me either.
This is Wade. This is Wade. Nothing to report.
Okay. Caroline?
Ken Pogue, nothing to report.
Thanks, Ken. King George?
Nothing to report, Dave.
Okay. Anybody I missed?
At large.
Would like. Oh, at large, of course. Yeah. Anybody at large?
I don't really have anything to report, but a possible solution to your voting thing, Miss Stacy, I sent it to you in a chat, but I'll send it to you in an email. It's called directpoll.com. You can set up real-time polls and give links to only your authorized voters, and you can do it within a few minutes prior to a meeting and then have the results real-time.
Perfect.
Anonymous.
Sounds
Thank
great.
you.
Good. I'd like to say that some of you, well, most of us had the informative session from PRTC ahead of the meeting. That was really good. That was helpful. And we look forward to having more of those kind of events, especially when we get back to in person, because it's not quite the same as you don't have the discussion. Everything is difficult. But anyway, thank you for that, Stacy, for setting it up, and thanks to the entire staff for getting us through this period of time and making this meeting come across. I'll tell you, the audio and video, from my perspective, I think it was great the whole time. You didn't have these people dropping out and all these other issues we've had. So, but it was well organized, and you guys had had done your homework, and thank you all of you for that. So that's all I've got. Anybody else? One last round, everybody? Okay, then we're going to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Oh, that's right. Anybody in favor of joining us? Anybody who's not in favor of joining us? Okay, let's adjourn.
Be safe, everyone.
Yeah, be safe, everybody.